To be honest, I think there's going to be some folks that are hesitant about this Austin Armstrong hire. We got to meet with him for the first time this past week. Obviously, he's now going through spring ball. He's going through install. He's learning these players. He's kind of, picking up on strengths and weaknesses. And we got to hear from him for the first time about his background, about kind of what led him to Gainesville. And it's funny, Nick, when you close your eyes, if you close your eyes and listen to the guy, he almost sounds like a young Kirby Smart, just in his mannerisms and kind of how he talks about defense. He even had one thing that he said. He goes, "There's also such a thing as bad experience," and and the way that he said it was like straight Kirby. But obviously, look, Billy's gone young once again. 29-year-old DC. He has made it clear that he's got no problem hiring young coordinators, and that's because he himself was a young coordinator at Clemson when he was the OC there at 29 years old. So this is nothing new for him. I think that he obviously feels like if a coach is qualified, if he's a good X's and O's play caller, if he's put in the work and he's come up under the right coaching tree and he's got some experience, that hey, I'm going to give this guy a job that he's earned. And that's where we stand right now with Austin Armstrong. Billy sees a guy that he, first met as a graduate assistant, who wanted to basically be, the next Nick Saban. He said to us this week, Nick Saban was his hero. Grew up an hour away in Tuscaloosa, or from Tuscaloosa, rather. He decided when he was 10 years old that he wants to be a coach. And then he gets fortunate enough to be at Louisiana. Billy gets hired, and now he gets exposed to Saban's coaching tree. He makes those connections, and then when he's done as a GA, he's got to find a job. And Billy sends him to Kirby Smart. Okay, you want to be a defensive coach? Go learn from the best. And he spends a year at Georgia as an analyst, and then he comes back to Louisiana now as a linebackers coach. And he's working alongside Patrick Toney, who was the outside linebackers coach and the DC, a young one at that. So those two guys are right there basically working with the same positions. And obviously gets the opportunity to go and actually call plays on his own at Southern Miss for the past 2 years, was the youngest defensive coordinator in the FBS, and then gets the opportunity of a lifetime to go home. And his dream comes true. And he gets to work for the Nick Saban. And then right when he's about to close on his house, Billy Napier calls and throws a wrench into those plans. And my man wasn't even in Tuscaloosa for a month, Nick. And
I think Austin Armstrong was nice. Said he did want to keep the conversation with him and Nick private, but that Nick was very understanding and very supportive.
He said he was phenomenal.
I call Cap. I call Cap. Nick Saban offers you a job and you're there for 8 days and you go, "Hey, Nick, peace out." I don't think that was a phenomenal conversation.
I don't think Nick was happy about it.
I don't think so.
And I
think Nick Saban made that face.
if you even look at that comment that Armstrong gave, and he said that he didn't want to divulge too much of that discussion, but he did say that Nick gave him some good advice, a lot of advice, and some pros and cons. So, definitely sounds like he tried to talk him into staying at Alabama. And, Armstrong said it was a privilege to be there. He's basically, his defensive system derives from the scheme that Saban and Bill Belichick created 30 years ago with the Browns. So this is something that, look, I don't think that he easily walked away from this job, as even though it was obviously a step up. You're going from a position coach to DC, you're making more money. And as he talked about, he went from being at Southern Miss, where he was the DC and called all the shots, and he worked for an offensive-minded head coach, to now he's at Alabama and he's got to shut up. And Saban's running the show and he's working under Kevin Steele and he's basically doesn't have the say-so that he did. So in a lot of ways, I think that he was probably happy about this Florida job, but I don't think that it was just, it was probably tough for him to tell Saban no, put it like that. But at the end of the day, I think Billy is probably banking on the fact that this is the next protege from this coaching tree, right? That this is the next guy that came up under Smart, that came up under Saban, that came up under this coaching tree in this defensive system and has learned from these guys that we're going to now groom and kind of have be our guy, have him be what Kirby Smart became at Alabama for so many years before he became the head coach at Georgia. I think that that's what Billy's hoping that Austin becomes.
Yeah, and it's someone that he's worked with already. I think certainly the familiarity that we've already talked about plays into it. But hey, I also get the Gator fans, hesitation because this seems like the University of Florida is taking some risks on some young coaches. Took a risk on Billy Donovan, crushed it. Took a risk on a young Kevin O'Sullivan, crushed it. Took risks on
Will Muschamp.
Young Will Muschamp, did not crush it. Took a risk on a young Mike White, didn't crush it. So I get it.
You got a young Todd Golden now too.
Yep. To be determined. Right now he's NI Todd. So and shout out to the Gators basketball team who'll be on the court tonight, Wednesday. At this point, you just have to, if I'm a fan, I have to trust Billy Napier and trust his evaluation. The inaugural season did not go as planned, but you have to trust the evaluation of your head coach, or you don't, and you can just be angry that not here to tell you how to feel.
Yeah, but if you're trying to look on the bright side, say, hey, the last defensive coordinator that this guy hired got snatched up by the NFL.
Yeah, also had a pretty terrible defense last year.
He did, but how much of that was on him?
Who's to say?
Yeah, us, Nicholas.
Who's to
the
say?
media
That could have been, yeah. Is that what we're here for?
And while we're on this topic, Armstrong sticking up for his boy Patrick, who he said that he talks to, and he says that he would not have taken this job had he been able to speak to Patrick and basically get all the ins and outs of it and know what he was walking into. And basically Patrick gave him his blessing that this was a good situation for you. So, I mean, I think when you look at it from that standpoint, obviously he's not, I think personally, just first time meeting him, hearing about him at practice, getting a sense for his personality, I think he's going to fit in pretty well here. And I think he might even fit in better than Patrick Toney. And I definitely think that he will maybe deal with some outside noise or pressure when things aren't going well.
I think he's already fitting. I think he's already fitting in better than Patrick Toney, just in terms of his reception among the players. And listen, it's not easy. We talked to Jaden Hill. Jaden Hill's, I think, going into his fourth year, third defensive coordinator. Reminded me of, I wrote about it today. It reminded me of Andre DeBose. My first year covering Florida in 2013, I go and talk to Andre DeBose at Media Day. And I was like, hey, man, didn't expect, I guess an 18-year-old Andre DeBose didn't expect he'd be sitting here. And he just went off because I've had 5 position coaches in 5 years. I'm like, that's not great. That's not great. But college football is a business. And I think Jaden Hill and some players learn that the really hard way. Jaden Hill in 4 years has had 3 different defensive coordinators. I think 3 different position coaches as well. So it's tough, but it seems like the guys like him. And listen, this isn't 2004. If they don't like you, they can just dip. You got the transfer portal. You can leave. So there's no need to even lie to the media or lie on Facebook and say, yeah, I love this guy. Because it's like, no, this guy stinks. I'm out of here.
Well,
So I do think they genuinely like him.
yeah, and obviously that's important, man, because Nick, we covered some Florida players that did not like their defensive coordinator when Todd Grantham was here, and they weren't shy about it. Some even let it slip in press conferences. So I think that's important to have that player coach relationship, and I think that Austin's going to be able to establish that pretty early, just based on his personality. And look, first meeting, that's the only time that we'll get to talk to him until fall camp. But again, circling back to where we were on the takeaways, I just think that there's a lot of situations that Billy could have found himself in trying to bring in a coordinator and make a change at that spot right before spring ball. And to get a guy in Austin Armstrong that has worked with him, that is basically taking over the same scheme, he could have asked for it to go any better in a really tough situation. And now at the end of the day, they got to get a good product on the field, and they got to improve this unit. And those two would be the first to tell you that.